Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning, my beautiful Facebook crowd, new people, old people have been around forever, the early adopters, all of that. Yeah, so I was just on, too funny, I was just on an activist website called The Guardian, and I'm sure you've seen it. It's an e-rag or an e-magazine. And, they're demonizing the latest corporation, which is Nestle, and Nestle's getting a bad rap because of all the environmentalists that don't like the fact that we are creating plastic for water and bottles. And maybe since we do have a waste problem with the inability to, I don't know, have biodegradable resources. It takes resources to melt all that plastic down, and then it doesn't make it to the right places as far as the waste, so it ends up all over the world. And so maybe there should be a biodegradable plastic that after a certain amount of time that it degrades. And I'm sure chemistry and scientists, especially these corporations and biotech, could figure that out. So I don't think we should ban plastic bottles, okay, because they are a modern convenience, especially in a very mobile society. And there are disasters and third world countries that while they're in the period of transition, they're going to need water get to them, okay? And so until they create an infrastructure to then drill in the ground and disturb the environment, there is an intermediary, there is an alternative source to be able to fill in those gaps as we are helping new and emerging countries create infrastructure and create a utilities resource type of wing of the government. And that's going to take time. And then, of course, in America, we have 300 million people who are always on the go. Tap water isn't always going to be readily available. Okay? So if we didn't have water in bottles, or say this, if we didn't have these corporations, if we didn't have a need for it, we wouldn't have these corporations. Okay? So I was challenging a lot of these people on these threads to be like, okay, you entitled Westerners, put yourself in a situation where you don't have access to corporations, where you're basically living off the grid, naked and afraid. I was watching Naked and Afraid a couple of days ago with my husband. I don't like always watching it because I'm just like, how do these people do it? You know, they're either in Alaska or they're in some kind of wilds of the Amazon, or speaking of that, actually no, or in like Nicaragua. They're in the middle of a jungle and they're trying to survive. And I'm telling you what, they don't become vegans anymore because they need protein source. So they're eating bugs, they're eating meat, they're eating lizards, they're eating anything that they can to give them fuel for 3 freaking days. So they have to constantly be hunting, constantly looking for food, constantly looking for a water source, constantly looking for or trying to build shelter, watching out for predators because they're naked and yeah, they're afraid because this is not something that they're used to doing, trying to survive with no clothes except for like a little burlap sack and then one weapon or one tool that I guess the producers allow them to have for the game. And so I'm just saying, like, guys, if you don't like something, don't buy it. Or create something that, like, if the problem is the waste from the water bottle, okay, fine, we create a water bottle that biodegrades after a certain amount of time. If you're afraid of them draining the aquifers in your immediate area, your government is not going to allow you to die of thirst because Nestle or somebody else is draining the water resources. So they can, well, people think they're trying to get rich, but if there wasn't a market for it, then they wouldn't have it there to begin with. We wouldn't have Nestle. But there's a market for it and there's a need for it, obviously. And for something other than just simple capitalism, there are transition times like the hurricanes and any natural disaster where water being piped in isn't really available. Okay, so you have to have bottled water for those types of situations, as well as any other situation that somebody deems appropriate. And that's not for anyone else out there to legislate and say, no, you can't have bottled water because I am around a water source continuously and I have my glass bottle, which I do. When I go to the airport, I have a glass bottle and it's small. It's like a spaghetti bottle that I put in the side of my backpack. And then they have water stations all around the airport. So that's a modern convenience, okay? that water gets filtered and piped in from a faraway resource. And I don't hear anybody bitching about that. Oh no, but God forbid should you have a company that gives you guys a convenience. Because let me tell you, every single person out there that's on that thread that I commented on has other types of bottles. Okay, but I know it's not even just like the water in the bottle, or not just the bottle and the waste. I mean, I'm sure that's part of their issues. But the fact that they're draining Florida's aquifers, which, you know what? They're taking water from Lake Erie and dispersing it to where it's needed. And who knows, it could be going all the way as far as Africa. It could be going as far as way as your next door neighbor who wants to go and travel across country, and they need bottled water along the way because they're not near a tap water source, or they can't, they have glass bottles, but you can't possibly fill a bunch of glass bottles, and you're not going to stop every 5 miles to go and fill up your glass bottles. So I mean, you got to look at this logically, okay? So it's just, so inserting my logic in there kind of pissed everybody off, but that's okay. I'm okay with having an idea that is really not of the mainstream, or it's going to go against the grain, because maybe dropping a few seeds of just logic might have people think in a different way, so they get off their hamster wheel. And that's why I talk about the world of living indefinitely, individually, in perpetual balance with Mother Earth. Because right now we have a lot of humans on this earth. Okay, I was watching some videos last night about the Filipinos, where the age of consent is like 12. Okay, and they're not taught contraception, they're not taught anything like that. So they're having babies after babies after babies, and there are some people from the West that are coming in there trying to teach contraception and maybe pressing charges against people who are in their 40s impregnating a 12-year-old. And it's like, it's hard to do that, because if the family, the mother and the father of that 12-year-old, finds that the father is willing to take care of that 12-year-old and the baby, they're not going to press charges. So now some of these Westerners are in there trying to help educate these third world countries. They're trying to see if they can press charges without the consent of the family. Okay, so we have some of these third world countries that are having babies after babies after babies, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, so we're in America here, the fertility rate is down, more education that we have to where, or we're so busy that we cannot have children, or we find that, like the J juicers, we're so healthy that we don't need to reproduce and we're not going to die, so we'll be that continuous resource living in perpetual balance with our immediate area. But yes, there are other countries out there that we have no control over. So who are they going to be? I mean, it's going to be a problem. It's already a problem, I'm sure. I mean, there's violence, there's criminal activity, human trafficking, all that stuff that happens in third world countries because there's an excess of humans that are not working in alignment with perpetual balance of Mother Nature. So it keeps multiplying. The problems keep multiplying and multiplying until at some point there will be a tipping point. I don't know what that is or what it's going to be, but watching YouTube kind of gives me a bigger idea of the problem that we have on a larger, grander scale. So it's important to understand, as far as the J juice and what you have to go through to live indefinitely, individually, in perpetual balance with Mother Earth. And then hopefully we can educate not only ourselves about our bodies and really what the role of humans are on this earth, but then have this bleed out to then the different governments that are out there. And then how do the different governments then tell their people? Now, as you can see, people who don't know any better, they're not very educated, are going to be exploited. That's what's going to happen. Exploitation happens when you have a weaker population and an uneducated population. We are so lucky in the West that we have what we have. I mean, I'm telling you, I count my blessings. I'm never going to be an activist against my own government as well as against anything else as far as my infrastructure, because I'm so thankful that I have this access to resources and access to education. But these other countries that are new and emerging are going to be are already a hotbed for human trafficking, criminal activity, and domestic violence and all of that. And you hope at some point when a government finds that their country is out of control, or when we start taking on criminals from other countries, now we need to have and education movement if we can even exemplify balance in our own country. Because why would any other country listen to us if we can't even exemplify balance within our own borders? And of course, we have 300 million people, as far as jelly juicers, to get a hold of and teach and shake a little bit. Say, hey, wake up, get out of your activism. If you're on a death trajectory, there's no possible way that you can legislate how to negotiate Earth's resources and humanity if you can't even negotiate your own resources in your body and your own internal and your own external environment. Okay, so the whole thing with J Juice is that we are going to create strong bodies that live in direct proportion with pain, productivity, and energy. And I know you're like, why is pain the first thing? Because you're always going to have some kind of pain whenever you enter into an environment that may not be completely aligned with yours, and it's going to upset your homeostasis. Some, it may really jolt their homeostasis if they're weak, okay, or if it's a major chaotic event. Okay, so not everybody is going to be completely aligned with every environment they walk into. So you might get a wake-up call that you're walking into some chaos, but you might have indicators prior, so you may not even get that wake-up call. But strong bodies are able to handle pain, productivity, and the energy, and they're all directly proportional. And so what is life? Life is if and only if the human body, to the power of viruses, because you're never, ever going to be away from viruses, plus the jelly juice, which is sodium chloride and water dissolved with lactic acid, fermented with the micro and macronutrition of kale and cabbage, okay? And then you have the lactobacillus, the right probiotic. Why is it the right probiotic? Because you have the electrolytes, and you have, of course, the time, temperature, and ratios. And if you were to ferment any other type of food source that has a bunch of sugar, and you're fermenting it with sugar instead of salt, then your yeast that's overfed, which is candida, then starts multiplying faster. So any probiotic type of property then becomes, it gets undermined by the sugar feeding the candida. So basically, the J juice, which is using the pink Himalayan salt and the lacto fermentation with the micro and macronutrition of the cabbage and kale, completes the balance of the body and fills in the holes where there's major gaps before. So that's why you don't ferment with kombucha or apple cider vinegar or even milk or coconut milk, because you already came into this world of J juice with an imbalance. So the human body, the power of viruses plus the jelly juice to the infinite power. So when you're plussing the human body to the power of viruses plus jelly juice, and you have the parentheses, and it's to the infinite power, you will always be doing J juice regardless, okay? Because you're always going to have to upgrade your body to be able to handle the messages of the universe, as well as the ever-changing environment, the fluctuations. And then it's equally proportional to the pain, productivity, and energy. So strong bodies and life is all about directly dealing with the pain, productivity, and energy with your environment. You're always going to be, basically what that is, what life is adaptation. Okay, so if you want to see what that formula is, these two things is adapting to your environment on a continuous basis. And then you get your body, mind, and spirit aligned, and then you get off the hamster wheel of activism and you understand why things exist. And believe me, if things are that imbalanced, the universe will correct it. And you may not always like it the way the universe corrects it, but the universe does correct it, okay? So on weak bodies, the ones that are on death trajectories, that are aging, degrading, and in their activist types of roles, well, they're utilizing antibiotics and probiotics. They are, what they're doing is, it's called the antibiotic probiotic method, and it's because it's directly having to do with the pain sequence. So they think that when they're in pain, it needs to be anesthetized or dealt with as far as symptoms wise. So if they have a pain in their arm, they're going to take an antibiotic or take a probiotic and directly try to manage that pain, not realizing they have 11 different systems that have issues that need to be addressed. But no, they deal with the body compartmentally. They compartmentalize their body parts. They don't realize they're all connected. And so weak bodies will always deal with things as if they were separate from each other. They don't realize that, yes, when you have a pain in your arm, it probably is affecting their heart and their brain and their uterus or their testes. Okay, so just having a pain in your arm doesn't mean that you just have a pain in your arm and that's it, they're separate from everything else. No, it means that everything else is affected and you're not really taking that into account. Okay, so that's a weak body. And then a death trajectory is when, if and only if, the human body plus then viruses to the infinite power plus then the antibiotic probiotic method that is directly proportional to the pain, productivity, and energy, then yeah, you know, all you're doing is taking the antibiotics and probiotics to then directly deal with each individual pain, and you don't realize it's all connected. And then, yes, this is where you have issues. Okay, so I mean, living perpetually in balance with Mother Nature is realizing why things exist, and that until we can get a well-balanced population internally in their own internal environment, there's no way you're going to legislate how to negotiate Earth's resources, okay, properly. And it's funny that those that are on a death trajectory are trying to negotiate Earth's resources, and they can't even negotiate their own resources. So this is just a little bit of a wake-up call for those, you know, and I'm not saying I'm going to try to, I'm not going to change their minds. I mean, I know that. I know my power of me, and like Maria Lucia Uribe, yeah, she's probably watched, you know, she's laughing at this because she hasn't negotiated her own resources. So she's going to laugh at anything that's going to remotely at all make sense, because people want to be in their activist roles. Their life goal is to take down corporations when they really should be negotiating their own bodies well balanced or imbalance with the earth they live on. And then of course, this kind of people are going to blame, like, oh, it's not my fault that I'm all messed up. It's the corporation's fault. Well, until those people are off this earth, we're going to deal with that. So just keep living, doing the J-juice, balance out your internal universe, balance out how you give away your energy as well as get the return on your investment. Deal with the pain sequence. Don't utilize J-juice as a remedy, or you'll be really sorely disappointed, literally and figuratively. And just realize that this is not a difficult venture. It really isn't that difficult when you think about what it is you're doing with the J-juice, because all you're doing is aligning. This is the body, mind, and spirit. The human body is basically the body, mind, and spirit all housed under one. Okay? And you're taking the elements, the resources from the J-juice recipe protocol, the chemical composition, and then you're negotiating all the elements that are in your universe, going through a chemical process. And then you know you're going to be exposed to viruses on an exponential level, to the power of viruses. You're never ever going to get away from this. I don't care who you think you are. You'll never ever get away from this. You'll get it in a vaccine, or you'll get it in your environment. And so you will always, with the J-juice, going to be negotiating your environment. And the environment's always going to change. And so if you can't adapt to the changes in your environment, then yes, you'll be aging, you'll be degrading, you'll be an activist, you'll blame the corporations, you'll blame your parents, you'll blame anyone that you can blame that may look like that they're the devil or the demon. Because I was thinking of, like, what is good and evil? Good and evil is balance and imbalance. And so, you know, as above, so below type of thing, right? Because you can have the same characteristics of something that is imbalanced, and then you can have the same characteristics of something that's pretty much balanced. Well, I don't even know how, yeah, that's pretty much balanced, because it's the context. It's all about context. Okay? And so, yeah, I mean, here's an example. When you're harboring a lot of minerals in your body and you're going through an upset of homeostasis, your body is going to go through specific changes, and then you will then get that you'll revert back to what you're supposed to be, but you'll still go through some changes, and then the body will heal itself. That's internally. Okay. And that's what you guys are dealing with on the J juice, is that you're now bringing to surface all the different minerals that cause your imbalance and cause your issues. So now you're gonna have an upset of homeostasis. But let's say you go walk into an environment that has the same minerals, but on the outside that you're breathing in, or there's like a chemical leak somewhere. You're gonna have the same manifestations. You're gonna feel the headaches, you're gonna feel the dizziness, the wooziness. Maybe you have skin issues that come up because you're getting chemicals directly contacted to your body. Well, it's the same thing in a different context. Okay, your body now is going to be trying to negotiate that environment, and either you get the hell out or you find some other resources that go and counter those elements. Okay, so no matter what, it's as above, so below. It's the context, but it's really truly what's going on and why, and then what are you going to do? What kind of strength and what kind of logic do you have to deal and negotiate with the resources that are out there and with the elements that are out there? And that's really all what it comes down to. And so corporations, I mean, if we were able to negotiate with the corporations, the tribes and the corporate executives, they were able to negotiate, they could have figured out something where it didn't have to turn into this big, huge fire of the Amazon. But since since the tribes didn't want to negotiate, they want to take it all for themselves, and they claim that we have, some kind of jurisdiction because we were here before. Sorry, but we live in a world full of people, and we keep reproducing. You guys the tribesmen keep reproducing. So do the executives keep reproducing. So we have to have land to be able to handle the amount of people on this earth until we can get our bodies well balanced, where we're not aging or reproducing. And then that's when we're living in perpetual balance. So, I don't mind stirring up the hornet's nest occasionally, because sometimes somebody needs to drop a few seeds of logic. And and if we get more people on J Juice to then talk about their healing, and I keep dropping seeds, and me stirring up the hornet's nest is a good thing in a lot of ways, because I'm not trying to be mean or nasty, though I do say I'm kind of disgusted by your entitlement, which, okay, can come off a bit aggressive, but just like tough love, when your kids are doing something wrong and they're crossing the street without looking both ways, you have to be like, hey, kid, what the hell? You're going to die if you don't look both ways and crossing the street. So you're not beating your child up. You're not doing anything horrible to your child. You're just like kind of waking them up, saying, hey, you need to look both ways before crossing the street. And so the next time the kid, before they cross the street, they look both ways, because they remember, oh God, I don't want to die from a car or my mom yell at me either way. Okay, so that's the same thing what I do when I stir up the hornet's nest. It's like saying, like a mother admonishing their child and saying, hey, let me just knock some logic into you so you're not spinning off of something that doesn't really exist. Believe me, your government is not going to allow a corporation to drain your water supply. Okay? So, I mean, it's always going to be a fight, because the fear of scarcity, the fear of all these things, and, maybe you should be afraid. Only the strong are going to survive. Those that can't afford to live on this earth, that don't know how to manage their finances and be able to produce on a continuous basis, you're going to suffer. You're not going to get in the right nutrients. You're not going to know how to negotiate the right resources. You're not going to know how to deal with how to adapt to your changes in your environment. And we're going to have viruses and pandemics. I mean, it's Darwinism. It's evolution. So if you can't negotiate the resources in your immediate area, then sorry, you can't adapt. Do you belong on this earth? Obviously not. Those that know how to negotiate the resources and the elements on this earth belong on here. Though there'll be a long time before people pass away, especially who are very imbalanced. I would say the worst case, or the best case scenario, is that they live to be 104, 108. We have somebody here in Ohio that lived 108. Okay? 108. And then we have people, the worst case scenario is that you die when you're born, you're dead. That's the worst case scenario. So, you have 50, 60, 70 years to figure out how to figure out the formula to life. If you haven't figured it out yet, then you never will. And hey, and then you'll be reproducing and creating the same copy of yourself. And hopefully that child will have access to different information than you did, so they don't repeat the same mistakes as their mother and father. But we'll see what happens. All right, guys, have a great day. Thanks. Bye.